when understanding the transparency behind body positivity, you can't do that with also looking at the food industry and big food. And I had Dr. Anna Lemke on my show a little while back. She's the author of Dopamine Nation. She's the head of Stanford University's addiction medicine clinic. And one of the big things that we've talked about was how our society and culture has just become so drugified past just what we understand as drugs, whether it's technology, social media, or one of those being food. And I wasn't aware of this until I dove deeper into your book about how food addiction technically isn't recognized as an actual addiction. Why is that so important to see? Because food definitely is an addiction.
Mm. Yeah, it's such an important thing to talk about because food is specifically an addiction in the United States of America. And it's a unique addiction here specifically because the big food is allowed to use a lot of these extremely addicting chemicals in their foods that countries in Europe, for example, are not at all allowed to use, even down to things like food dyes, which have an incredible impact on children and their behavioral issues, their attention span, their cognitive function. And these are the types of foods that are quite literally designed to make you addicted to them. If you look at a bag of Doritos here in the United States, the ingredients are going to look very different from a bag of Doritos in that you might get in London. Same thing for something like Heinz ketchup. The ketchup that you get here is going to be different than the ketchup that you get in Ireland. I just checked in with one of my clients and she went to Ireland for 2 weeks with her family. And she says, my husband and I looked at the Heinz ketchup there and it looked very, very different than the type of ketchup we get in America. And so these little things, it may not seem like a big deal, but it is a really big deal here because we have so many people who are addicted to ultra processed foods, whether it's snuck into their condiments or whether it's because these are the types of things that parents are packing for kids at school, even down to fast food. You know, if you look at the ingredients in like an Arby's sandwich or something in McDonald's, those ingredients are also going to look very different than the type of fast food that you see overseas. And this is a scary thing because you think that you're just living life normally and you're consuming real food, but at every turn you're eating some kind of chemical, some kind of preservative, some kind of endocrine disruptor that is modifying the way that you respond to food, that's modifying the types of food that you crave. And of course, it's affecting your metabolic function. It's affecting the way that your brain functions. And this is having such huge ripple effects on everything in society. And I mean, you know, put on my tinfoil hat, but I think it's by design. This is exactly how they want us. They want us to be docile. They want us to be controllable. They want us to be not functioning in our optimal state because it makes it much easier for us to be comatose. And when you're comatose, you're much more easier to control.
So, how are individuals supposed to navigate their way out of that? And I'm talking specifically, like, if we're talking in terms of like, hey, this is like an actual addiction, not just like somebody who is, oh, eating unhealthy. These are my bad habits. Like, let me just clean, some stuff up. But if we are looking at this from the vantage point of, hey, this is a true addiction to the point of we're getting into the neurological here and my dopamine receptors are craving this and I have a true addiction. How are people like, can people do that on their own, do you think? Or like, does it get to the point where like you truly do need professional care?
I think it depends. I think there are a lot of people who can do it on their own, but there are also a lot of people who need the support, and there's nothing wrong with either way. There's something wrong with getting the support, working with whether it's a medical provider or working with a coach who has a lot of experience training people. Because one of the first things, for example, that I do with my clients, so I work primarily with women. A lot of them are moms, and I would say a little more than half of them are already women that eat fairly healthy. But maybe like 40% of women who sign up to work with me are truly addicted to ultra processed foods. One of the first things that I work on with them is eating the type of high protein whole foods that are going to make you feel satiated. you have to make your body feel full. Because one of the things about eating chips upon chips and then cookies and all these snacks is that you're never actually full because it's these highly processed carbohydrates that are not making you feel satiated. So we start every single morning, and this is like across the board. I don't think there's anybody that I don't do this with on my client list. We start every single morning with a high protein breakfast, at least 30 to 40 grams of protein with breakfast, which is actually very rare for people to do when they first start working with me. And I think most Americans, you think about the average American who's just consuming a lot of the stuff, what are they eating for breakfast? They might have a little bowl of cereal. They might have a piece of toast. They might grab a donut and a coffee with pumps of sugar and syrup in it. They're really not eating anything first thing in the morning that helps them feel satiated. And that affects you negatively in so many ways, but primarily you're going to feel hungry by the time 11 o'clock rolls around, and you're going to reach for the nearest thing, which is probably something sugary as well. So that's the first thing that I normally work on is creating a sort of meal plan that allows these women to eat actually more food, like a higher volume of food than they may be used to. But this food is much more satiating. So by the time they get to dinner, they might actually feel too full. They're like, I don't actually really want those cookies or the chips in the pantry because I've eaten a lot of food today. I've eaten like 1900 calories of food today. So it kind of depends. Some people are definitely more than able to just kind of make that happen for themselves, but others, they really appreciate that type of coaching and the support, because a lot of people sometimes don't even know where to start in the kitchen. So it helps to just have some recipes or some meal ideas to just help them get that extra protein during the day.
Do you think on the flip side of that, it's become common knowledge within US culture that the US food industry is just not set up the way it should be, and then using that as a scapegoat or an excuse for, like, hey, the US food industry is terrible, like I but it's like, no, you still have autonomy, and I think that can also play into the whole body positivity movement. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I've heard this a lot. I heard the same argument for people who are born into low income communities. They say things like, well, we just don't have access to that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, when you look at some of the research where these types of communities where they claim that the issue is access, or they claim that the issue is these food companies that are giving them food that is unhealthy, there has been some research, and I forgot the name of the study, but Harvard definitely conducted the study where they have gone into these communities and provided healthy food, and they've just basically given it to them. But these individuals still end up choosing the ultra processed stuff. They still choose the prepackaged foods. They still choose the snacks and the stuff that's not going to make them feel full, and the type of food that is basically nutritionless. So it is, I don't want to say it's mutually exclusive, but I think a lot of times people don't like to admit that they really want to make a change. I think that a lot of people really struggle with finding that autonomy and finding their why, finding the reason why they want to actually make changes in their life, because it's easy to sit back and blame the world for all of your problems. And that can apply to just about anything. You know, I think we live in a society now where people are encouraged to blame the world for their problems. And so I think it is easy for people to sit back and say, well, look at all the stuff that RFK Jr. is pointing out. Like, we're just up against it. Like, why even try? We're never going to be able to find foods that are healthy for our kids. I think first and foremost, we have to start with the personal responsibility and really ask ourselves, like, what can I change? And I think people would be surprised at how much they can change with just themselves before they start to complain and lament about what big food is doing to them.
And it goes back to those addictive tendencies where it's not just about bad habits. Like if you're of the mindset of, oh, I could stop if I want to, and then you can't, it's like, okay, well, then you're showing addictive tendencies here.